On its website, the U.S. Coast Guard Academy promises to develop officers with, quote, character. Its mission, in part, to graduate young men and women with a, quote, high sense of honor. But the results of a secret investigation into alleged sexual abuse at the academy, exclusively obtained by CNN, reveal a decades-long history of ignoring or covering up accusations of rape, assaults, and other serious misconduct. What's more, the Coast Guard kept this report secret for nearly 4 years and only came clean to Congress this month after inquiries by Pamela Brown. She has more.
The multi-year investigation was called Operation Fouled Anchor and uncovered a history of rapes and assaults at the U.S. Coast Guard Academy that were ignored or even covered up by high-ranking officials. But Coast Guard officials have kept the investigation secret since 2019 and never released the report, only approaching Congress this month after CNN asked about it. During the investigation, the Coast Guard found evidence of dozens of cases of sexual assault, even though they only looked into a specific time frame, from the late 80s to 2006, overlooking many years when other assaults had been reported. A report on the investigation found suspected attackers were not criminally investigated. Punishments, if they happened, were sometimes as minor as extra homework. Victims sometimes faced punishment for fraternization or lewd acts. Many suspects went on to have successful military careers, while victims were sometimes kicked out of the academy. For those who stayed, it could be just as difficult.
I was sexually assaulted 3 times. It was completely toxic and devastating to my sense of self, and left lifelong damages to my physical, mental health.
This young woman is a recent cadet. She graduated in 2022 and says the Coast Guard culture has not changed.
The Coast Guard Academy employs, reinforces, and cultivates a system that thrives on the trauma and pain of women and minorities. It's designed for their failure.
The Coast Guard's secret investigation revealed that female cadets described survival tactics they had to use while at the academy. They would rig their doors to make it hard to get in, prop rifles against the door, or utilize a trash can. And that cadets were hesitant to report for a fear that as female cadets, they wouldn't be taken seriously. One woman described a fraternity of male cadets that hated women and didn't think women should be in the Coast Guard.
You realize that if you say something, you are blacklisted, because now you're the girl who cried wolf.
Even if it really happened.
Even if it really happened.
It sounds like, from what you've described, the survivors are the ones who are punished, and those accused of sexual assault go on to thrive.
Exactly. When cadets get in trouble, there is this intense shame, this group shaming.
The Coast Guard did investigate one of this victim's assaults, but told her they didn't find enough evidence.
I was 17. I needed my mom. I needed somebody to stand up for me in those moments, and it broke me.
Democratic Senators Maria Cantwell and Tammy Baldwin sent a letter Friday to the head of the Coast Guard that called the information, quote, disturbing, and demanded answers. They committed to pursuing full accountability for perpetrators and investing in meaningful support for survivors.
And I'm joined now by CNN anchor and chief investigative correspondent Pamela Brown. Pam, what does the Coast Guard have to say about all this?
Well, John, after CNN's report was first published this morning, the Coast Guard sent us a statement apologizing about the mistakes made in the fouled anchor investigation, saying that the Coast Guard fully recognizes that by not having taken appropriate action at the time of the sexual assaults, the Coast Guard may have further traumatized the victims, delayed access to their care and recovery, and prevented some cases from being referred to the military justice system for appropriate accountability. The Coast Guard owns this failure and apologizes to each of the victims and their loved ones. And I will tell you, our colleagues on the investigative team, Blake Ellis, Melanie Hicken, Audrey Ash, we're going to stay on this story as it unfolds. John?
Getting answers because of the questions that you and your team are asking. Pamela Brown, great to have you. Thank you so much.